Hello, everybody. Welcome to another live Third Apron podcast. I am your host, Yossi Gazan. With me, as always, my co-host, Sam Quinn. And tonight, we are going to do our first Who Says No full-length episode of the season. We're about a month into the season, and we have a pretty early grasp on how the standings are shaken now, rotations, who might be going in one direction or another. So it's still pretty early, but me and Sam decided that it might be time for us to start getting into our bag and finding some trades to pitch to each other. So we're going to do maybe 10. And for those of you in the chat, feel free to put some in the chat. Maybe we'll go through them. As you can see, my backdrop is slowly starting to come through. I was able to mount this LeBron and KG jersey. I've got a couple more that are coming up, mainly like 2000s era. Got these coming up, Rasheed Wallace, Shaq, and a couple others. So just a quick update on how that's coming along. But yeah, so anything we should add to this before we get to it, Sam?
I love how you have all of these superstar jerseys in your background, and the only directly NBA related piece of art in my background is Boris Diaw's number behind me. I think we have very different tastes in players.
Wait, so that 3, it's
what do you mean by Boris Diaw?
But what is that exactly? That 3?
It's a jersey number signed by Boris Diaw. It is Boris Diaw's jersey number 3, signed by Boris Diaw. And if you give me the whole screen for a second.
Yeah, you're on.
So next to the Boris Diaw number is a basketball signed by Bill Walton, because I think the deep cut fans on here will remember Bill Walton's legendary, I don't want to call it a rant, but Bill Walton's legendary on-air commentary about Boris Diaw, where he compared Boris Diaw to Beethoven the pianist during a 2006 game, I think it was. So I'm glad that those two pieces of memorabilia get to live together. So yeah, we went in different directions as far as our backgrounds went.
Yeah.
You know what? So we both love basketball. We love it in different ways.
Well, so basically, these are all these don't fit on me anymore. These are from 20 years ago, and as you can tell by the other ones I just showed a couple minutes ago, it's all from the same era. So that's kind of what I was going for. These are all jerseys from, when I first started getting into following the league 20 years ago. So like mid 2000s players. So that's what will be going up. And I've got another wall to, over here. You could maybe I'll put more stuff. We'll see. But anyways, let's get to it. Sam, I'll let you go first. Send me your first trade.
Yeah, I've got a lot of Mavericks ideas. I've published most of them. I mean, Anthony Davis, we did a whole hour and a half about earlier in the week. But there are a lot of players on the Mavericks that I think would interest other teams. And I imagine anybody but Cooper Flagg and PJ Washington, since he can't be traded because of the extension that he signed over the summer, I would imagine they'd listen on anybody else. So a major topic with the Mavericks is that while they control their own first-round pick this year, they don't control any of their first-round picks between 2027 and 2030, which basically means they have a one-time chance to tank again to get Cooper Flagg a long-term running mate. In the West, it might not be realistic to avoid the lottery in Cooper Flagg's second year, especially if you're giving a major role to a rookie, whoever they pick this year, and you've traded off some of your veterans. I think the Mavericks would probably like to regain control of their pick in 2027. But at the same time, from Charlotte's perspective, Charlotte owns that pick. It's not especially valuable because they can't control it. And they have to live with the risk of Dallas not making any teardown trades, and maybe Kyrie coming back healthy next year and Cooper Flagg taking a big jump. And suddenly the Mavericks are the number 6 seed and that's the number 19 pick, and it's just not as valuable to them. So I wonder if there's a trade there where Dallas can get that pick back and maybe slow play their rebuild a little bit, while Charlotte can get some players who really help them. So my idea here is Max Christie and Daniel Gafford for Colin Sexton and the Dallas 2027 pick. The idea here would be that Charlotte gets two role players they could really use. A very nice young 3-and-D player in Max Christie, value contract, only 22 years old. Luke Kalkbrenner has been good, like for Charlotte. Like is his first name even Luke? I don't even remember. It's either Luke or Ryan.
Ryan.
Kalkbrenner. Why did I have Luke in my head then? Oh, I was thinking, am I thinking about Luke Cornett? Am I mixing up my white centers?
It seems like it, Sam.
Kalkbrenner. Kalkbrenner's been good for them, whether or not I can remember his first name. So getting another center in there would be nice. He's like a solid high bench, slow starter center, like I would say. So getting another big in there would help. I think having Gafford's roll gravity would be very, very helpful for LaMelo. And yeah, that pick is just less valuable to them than it is to Dallas. And also, like, quietly getting Colin Sexton to Dallas would be pretty helpful. Just having a good, not creator so much. He's a better passer than I think he gets credit for. He really grew on that front in Utah, but he's not like a great shot creator for teammates. But a good scoring guard, open things up offensively for Flag, could be kind of helpful. Like, you could keep him. He's a free agent at the end of the year. Keep him on a decent contract. Yeah, I think it's just a good, sensible trade for both sides.
So I would guess that right now, Charlotte probably says no. I'm reading your whole trade now. I didn't look. I haven't told him my trades. He sent me his, but I haven't looked at them because I want to be surprised. But now I'm reading through it. So, but with Charlotte, this is more something that I could see them maybe doing next year. I think right now there's a huge mystery box with the Mavs first round pick in a couple of years from now, where if you're Charlotte, you're still in a rebuilding situation. Still a lot of question marks as far as what, like, who is going to be a part of their next Hornets team. It's LaMelo's in trade rumors. Brandon Miller, he's just unavailable. Like, we don't really know who exactly is going to be part of the team that starts to go to the next level, start to make a run for the play-in tournament, anything like that. So maybe next year, if they start to look a little better, they maybe strike on another good draft pick. And maybe the Mavs have already done some moves that indicate that by 2027 they might be kind of solid. Okay, maybe then I could see Charlotte going for something like this. I think the value is pretty fair, assuming the Mavs are going to be decent. And I kind of anticipate that they're going to figure some stuff out over the next year plus to put a nice cohesive group around Cooper Flag through trading Davis, through trading Kyrie Irving. But for now, I think Charlotte would want to hold on to that Mavs pick.
Yeah, there's a gamesmanship that comes with getting your own pick back, because you have to convince the team that you're going to be good so they don't think that the value is there. But kind of at the same time, the fact that you're talking about the trade means that you want to be bad. Like we saw this with Houston and Brooklyn when they made the Mikal Bridges trade, where it's like Houston is demanding this premium and Brooklyn is going back and forth and saying, like, we don't have to trade Mikal Bridges. We can just keep Mikal Bridges. And the Rockets correctly deduce, like, you're lying. You're not going to do that. Like, there's a negotiating element to that, like, I don't know if Dallas can pull off with interim GMs, but I do think it's going to depend on what else they do, right? Like, Anthony Davis, I think we assume, is going to be traded. But even if you move Anthony Davis, there's like a lot of good veterans on that team where if you just reorganize it a little bit, they could be kind of competent. So even like they don't, like, the fact that they're this bad this year, even if they bring back most of the roster next year, there is a world in which they're like 500 or like 45 wins. And that is the 15th, 16th pick. Whereas I think if Dallas traded back for it, the idea would be we're going to make this the 7th pick or the 6th pick. So yeah, I get it, but I think it does make some sense for both sides. I think Charlotte really could use a 3-and-D guy like Christie, especially just because, like, they're a very offense-centric team as far as like the core players that they have. Like LaMelo is obviously very offense-centric. Concadiple's just been like good across the board, but I don't think he really profiles as somebody who should be defending the best perimeter guy on another team.
Right.
Like, I think getting a younger defensive perimeter guy in there is important. This is a way to do that, I think. But yeah, I get it. I understand why Charlotte would want to be a little patient on this. That pick is also top 2 protected, we should point out. So Dallas could also say, do you really want to take the risk with the lottery?
Yeah. All right. I also have a Daniel Gafford trade.
Yeah.
Because when we last spoke, we did we looked at the Anthony Davis trade market. We looked at just a little bit of the Kyrie trade market, which right now there isn't much right now until he's healthy. But I did ended on saying that I could see Daniel Gafford being traded pretty soon. If out of all the vets, PJ Washington can be traded. I think there's a handful of teams that could just bring in Gafford now, especially on the contract that he's on. And the one team, but I don't think he's going to get, I don't think the Mavs, I don't think they're going to get like a quality first round pick back. And I wonder if they'll even get a first round pick if they trade him this year. But what I came up with is sending him to Orlando. Basically, the money is for Jonathan Isaac and Goga Batadze. Now, it's still incomplete because I haven't figured out what exactly the Magic are sending back as far as some draft equity, because I feel like it should probably be some pick swaps, but there's some incongruency where the Magic have traded their even numbered picks, the Mavs have traded their odd numbered picks. So even if they wanted some pick swaps in the odd numbered years, the Mavs technically can't receive that because they don't have their picks in 27 and 29. So I'm just thinking, I'm debating between a 2032 like very heavily protected first, like top 20, or like a 2031 swap. That's kind of where I'm at with the value. It's not much. Maybe instead they send them one of their recent first round picks, like Jace Richardson or Jett Howard, maybe a bunch of second round picks. But as far as the money goes, that's the main thing. I think the Magic could use a rim protector like Daniel Gafford to come off the bench. So when you have him making around like 18 million and Wendell Carter also making around 18 million, I think that's like a pretty good high end. Like they're not both like high end centers, but like for two guys that could scale down and potentially come off the bench depending on the role, I think that I kind of like the idea of having that type of center rotation with two guys making that amount of money, and that's probably what they can realistically pay their centers with everyone else that they're paying on the roster. So, what do you think about that one?
We talked a lot about this over the summer, about this like kind of increasing trend where instead of paying one center 35 million a year, you pay two centers 17. Like your goal is to have two starting caliber centers and divide them like 24 minutes apiece, like Dallas making the finals with Gafford and Lively. I think Portland's hope is that Klingon and Yang Hansen can do that as well. Like you're devoting real assets, real money into multiple centers with the idea that like we'll get more out of them on a permanent basis if they're both playing 24 minutes instead of one of them is playing 32. Wendell Carter and Daniel Gafford have diverse skill sets. Like you're getting different things out of those two guys. So in theory, I think that partnership makes sense. Number one, the trade comp is hard to figure out for the reasons that you laid out. I think Daniel Gafford is just the sort of player that tends to net like a pick in the 20s. I don't think you want to trade a pick with like real upside for him. So takes out the stuff in like 31, 32. I just don't think he's worth it unless you're a team that's like thinks it's a Daniel Gafford away from winning the championship. Like I think if the Lakers did a 30 like 2031 swap or something for Daniel Gafford, there's proof of concept because he's done it with Luka, and you can have Ayton and Gafford doing that, split the center roll down the middle thing. I also just kind of think this is not an archetype of center that the Magic really want or have ever really prioritized, where like they've never really had like a pure role center. And I'm not saying I'm opposed to that, but a pure role center tends to operate best on a team with great spacing, which the Mavericks don't really, or with the Magic don't really have. So I kind of like if you're running pick and roll with like, I don't know, Paolo and Gafford and like somebody's helping off of Franz and helping off of Suggs. And like suddenly I think that makes Gafford less effective. So I don't know if that's really a fit. I kind of like the idea that the Magic have had where they want their centers, like Wendell Carter is theoretically a pop threat. I don't know that it really manifests quite as well as the talent theory suggests it should. Goga Batadze is like kind of more of an offensive hub type. Jonathan Isaac is just a defensive ace, or at least he was a few years ago. I don't think he's been nearly as good so far this year. So like I understand the idea of trying to mix it up for the Magic at center. They have this weird situation where like they have four centers. Mo Wagner hasn't played yet, but Mo Wagner is like also an important part of this rotation. And I think it's a little weird to have that many people who are like either centers or potential centers. Having some clarity would help. Gafford's not really the guy for them, I don't think.
Okay, so let me go to my next trade then. And the
Okay.
reason's because these ones I was having a really hard time just figuring out who I'd want to send to who. But ultimately, I think it's possible you could switch these trades around, these players around with the teams. And I'll just do a little introduction to where I'm getting at because I haven't seen this out there. I kind of brought it up to you privately, but as we all know, the Clippers are having a
Oh,
horrible
you're
start
gonna
to the
steal my
season.
trade, aren't you? This is one
Oh,
I
I
was
don't know.
saving this one for Wednesday, but I'm curious if this is where you're gonna take this.
I'm sure you're going to take it to a much stronger level than I potentially have.
Okay.
But the Clippers, something that I've said I don't know how many times if I said it on the podcast, but something that I've been pointing out is that I don't think there's really there's very few players that have positive value on the Clippers right now. And the further this goes, the more I'm going to feel like not that they should look into trading Ivica Zubac, but like if they're going to be more like not even close to the play-in range, I'm gonna start to feel like maybe they like must trade Ivica Zubac. He's to me their only player with strong positive value, and towards the tail end of my Laker fandom, before I started getting into NBA media, learning the salary cap, Ivica Zubac was like one of the last few draft picks of that era, for my era. And then and I remember he was like 18, 19. He was really young. And now, like, time flies. He's already in his 10th year. I think he's going to be 30 soon. Like, now is really the time to strike on that. So the trade I came up with in the end, I had him going to the Chicago Bulls for Zach Collins as the salary matching, and the Clippers would get 2 first-round picks back. The first is the lesser of the Blazers draft pick this year and the Bulls' own. So this is assuming the Blazers make the playoffs, and then also a top 8 protected 2028 first-round pick from the Bulls. The Bulls in the past, they haven't had too much of a problem trading multiple picks in the future. Now, I'm wondering if you think, like, one, what do you think about it for the Bulls? One, I think, like, yeah, he might not be the best for their shooting and spacing, especially with Giddey and potentially Okoro, 2 non-shoot. Oh, now Giddey has been a shooter, but like, it's still hard for me.
Let's slow your roll there a little bit.
He has been a shooter, but like, and I exactly, I'm with you on there. We're like, I still want to see, like, I still kind of don't feel like it's that real. But either way, so that's where on that, it's mostly about getting that contract. Zubac's making $18-20 million a year is such a good contract where you can bring that in, and ideally the Bulls would want a stretch 5 center, but I can't find who they are out there. Like, they're not available. There's not really many out there, like the Miles Turners. Like, there's Kristaps Porzingis, but he can barely stay on the court. So if you bring him in at 18 million, you could still potentially re-sign Vucevic and still have that option, assuming he's going to make a little less than Zubac going forward. So then that's your center rotation for the next few years, which I think is solid. So with that said, I feel like these two are kind of interchangeable. I could see a Gafford trade where he goes back to the Bulls just for one of those first round picks, probably just like the upcoming one this year. That'd be pretty good value for the Mavs. And then like if the Magic do need to trade that 32 first round pick, I think Zubac is a much better value play for that selection. And before I go any further, so let me just hear from you. I think I've spoken a lot so far.
Are we sure the Clippers have to trade Zubac? He is the player on that team with the most trade value, I think. Like, trading Kawhi is so fraught for so many reasons. I had a James Harden idea in mind that I'm going to save for Wednesday. Are we sure they have to trade Zubac? Because he's the only guy in that core that you feel like probably could carry over into whatever the next era of Clippers basketball is. They have all of this cap space saved up. I presume at some point in the next year or two, they will replace Harden and Kawhi with a younger primary shot creator. And having Zubac with that guy will like be a nice little floor raising thing, whether like you suggested Ja Morant, I suggested Trae Young. I don't know who it's going to be, but I don't think the Clippers are really envisioning a scenario in which they totally go in the tank because, I mean, aside from not having their picks, I just don't think that's in Ballmer's DNA. So, like, yeah, it's in a vacuum, you might say it makes sense to turn Zubac to cash him in for a couple of picks, rebuild slowly over a few years, even though you don't have picks, but like just accumulate assets that way. I don't think Ballmer's going to act that way. And I don't think Ballmer wants to give the Thunder any more great picks, right? Like, I think there's a human element of this where if Steve Ballmer has already given the Thunder SGA and Jalen Williams, if he gives them another top pick this year, which I don't want to say feels likely at this point, it feels very possible. I don't know how eager he is to like keep giving the Thunder better and better picks. So I am dubious that they would trade Zubac. As far as the trade itself goes, yeah, you hit on my primary concern, which is that as the Bulls, I think having a stretch center is important. I think Zubac would otherwise fit fairly well there. Like, he is a very versatile roller where he can roll hard to the rim and become a lob threat. Playing with James Harden really helped on that front. But he can also pop a little bit. He's got like a nice little floater. Like, he can do a lot for you. He's a great screener, underrated passer, can do whatever you need on defense. Like, he would be like a good, fine fit for them outside of the shooting thing. I think the value is probably reasonable. So let me go back through those picks again. It would be the lesser of the Bulls and the Blazers this year, but if the Blazers miss the playoffs, it would automatically be the Bulls unprotected, right?
I think they could work some other types of conditions.
Yeah, if I'm
where...
the Clippers, you stop talking. Like, if I'm the Clippers and I hear there's like, you're trying to protect, no. Like, either it's the Blazers pick or it's the unprotected Bulls pick. Because the appeal to me is that Portland, as well as they've played, are still in the West and are still the number 9 seed. So there's still a good chance they do miss the playoffs. What I really want is a chance for the Bulls to bulls all over the place and be in the lottery again. Like, that's what I want if I'm the Clippers. So we're not talking about protections if we're doing that. And what was the other pick?
Oh, and then a 28 Bulls top 8 protected first. So, and the big reason for 2028 is because the Clippers, they owe a 2028 first round pick. So if they're going to get an extra pick in the future, at least try to get one potentially valuable one in the year you still owe a pick to. That would be the Sixers that year.
Yeah, can we get that down to top 4? The upside you're constructing here is just not high enough for me to justify this. Where like, it's the Bulls, so I don't think they're going to be great. I think those are 2 middling first round picks. I don't want to trade Ivica Zubac on this great contract for like the number 17 pick and the number 13 pick. I would rather like just keep him and do whatever I'm going to do to rebuild the team in the next year or two and have him be a part of that. I don't think the upside there is high enough for me to justify that. The thing about trading centers, though, is that at any given time, you have like 2 or 3 teams that really, really, really need one, and the rest of the league just doesn't. So, like, if you're the Clippers and you're doing this, you're going to Chicago and you're saying, can you overpay us for Zubac? You're going to Indiana and you're saying, will you overpay us for Zubac? Like, it's a short list of teams. But if they're, like, they need a center so badly that, like, I could see somebody overpaying to do it, especially somebody like Indiana, where cost is such a factor for them, where they, like, don't want to pay the luxury tax, seemingly. So that would be something to keep in mind. But I'm really just asking the desperate teams. I'm seeing if I can get, like, 120 cents on the dollar. And if I can't, I'm just keeping Zubac and saying we're going to roll him into whatever we're doing next. They are not going to want to go through 2 bad years, or 2 years where it's like, we know we're going to suck. This is totally a recruiting thing. Like, aside from the optics, you're competing with the Thunder, aren't you? Right? Like, if you give the Thunder another top 3 pick, you have to do that with the understanding. And I know this is going to sound jarring. You have to do that with the understanding that pick might be on their team until 2040. Like,
right, but
understand the significance of that.
But we're also missing a very important piece of context that the Clippers' outlook could take another hit around,
they know more about
the trade deadline. So that's the thing. Like, I'm going with this. Like, if they get hit hard with the cap circumvention penalties, and I think that would push them more towards you probably should trade Zubac. Where if you're going to lose more draft picks in the future, you're going to lose Kawhi. I think then they should probably do it. Otherwise, okay, I think you make a pretty good case. Maybe they don't have to. What do you think of the Magic side of potentially for Zubac? Same contract basically as Gafford.
Better, I think. The problem with the Magic though is that I don't see how they have the assets. What are they giving
2032.
Up? That's no.
You think that's too much?
It's not that it's too much. It's that it's not enough. The 2032 has value if your best player is 33 and you're like, oh, Steph Curry is going to be retired by then, or like something like that, where you're thinking it's going to be a totally different team. The Magic are unique in that they're trying to win right now, but their best players are in their like early 20s. So you're kind of giving up a first round pick at that point when Paolo is going to be like 29. I just don't see quite as much upside there. I guess what you could talk yourself into is like they're going to combust between now and then, which like this is not about the Magic. I think in the modern NBA, every team, if you're going out 6 years, except for like the Thunder and the Spurs, do have some combustibility. There's always a chance it could happen, but the 2032 pick from Orlando does not mean the same thing as the 2032 pick from Denver. So I just don't think there's enough there.
See, I'm thinking that's too much for the Magic in the sense that I think that like any pick that far out is pretty valuable, but the Magic already traded all their other first round picks, so they only have one to trade. Like, is Zubac really the where they want to shoot?
Well, yeah, that's another team that needs a shooting center. Yeah.
Now, at the same time, if the Magic, they could conceivably still trade that first, with the understanding that like their next move would likely involve one of Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, or Desmond Bane, where they're already in a position where they don't really have many moves to make. But assuming you could recoup a bunch of draft picks, other players that could better fit that group, like then trading that extra pick might not really factor in the long run. So just interesting, just thinking about what Orlando could be doing, could be trying to do, because that Bane trade kind of hamstrung them for the next year or two. They don't really have too much more they could do without giving up a pretty valuable pick. All right, you're up.
I have a segue. As we're talking about deep future picks from older teams, Dallas, another guy they have that I think would interest a lot of teams is Naji Marshall. Not only is he just a very good wing defender who's like, the shooting is kind of up and down. I think he has more to do on off. Like, he's not a stationary shooter. He can dribble a little bit, create a little bit, just a smart all-around offensive player who obviously is very good on defense as well, who makes $9 million or something in that range. I would like to get him to a contender. I just don't think he makes sense on a rebuilding team. Denver, let's get them on the phone. Denver has their 2031 unprotected swap that they can offer. And they have Zeke Naji's contract in that same salary range that they would love to get off, is very hamstringing to them, a team that's like very, very capped out, but not so hamstringing to a team like Dallas that's going to be built around guys on rookie contracts for the next few years. So Naji for Zeke, the all Naji trade, Naji Marshall for Zeke Naji and a 2031 pick swap. Where do you fall on this?
I think that is very reasonable. It's hard to say who would say no to this as I'm reading the details out loud. So Denver would be trading their 2031 pick swap to the Mavs. The Mavs, yeah, they have all their picks in 2030 outwards. I would, if a team were to say no, I think I think the team more likely to say no would be Denver, but I think that Zeke Nnaji contract is it's gonna be it's just such like it's just sitting there. It's still got 2 years left. They can't really do anything with it. They've been struggling to move it. Like I'm afraid they might have to stretch it if they're going, especially as you get closer to next year. Once they need to make a decision, and then this is where maybe another reason Denver says no. I would assume this means they're not bringing back Peyton Watson, right?
Yeah, that my other thought would be that he would be kind of a replacement for Watson as well. But you'd also have both for this championship or this playoff run. Here's my other question, like hypothetically speaking, would Denver do a 2031 pick swap just to dump the Zeke Nnaji contract? Are they cheap enough to do that? I think
I
the
think they'll
answer
want
is
a player
no, but I
back.
wouldn't rule it out. But like my point here is if Denver does decide we are so desperate to save money because of the upcoming tax bill with Christian Brown's contract kicking in, doing this trade does make some sense because you could very easily trade Naji Marshall into somebody's mid-level in the offseason if you felt you needed to do that, or if you decided that we want to re-sign Watson instead and he's going to cost more than we thought. Like that, this gives you a little bit more room to pivot, I think, while also making your team better this year. I look at this on the Dallas end and I say it seems kind of unlikely that two interim co-GMs, which is another can of worms that we haven't really gotten into. I find it unlikely that they would be like, yeah, we really want to pick swap 5 years from now. So that's kind of where this gets hairy. I think it's easier for them to sell a Naji Marshall trade as a win if they get like the number 27 pick back and like, I don't know, a trade with Houston or whatever. I don't think that's the right move. I would almost always rather have the lottery ticket 5 years in the future than the late pick coming up right now. But I think the way the Mavericks are positioned right now, I think their front office might prefer to have, they'll just like, let's get the 26th pick and call it a day.
I think this is something that could definitely be looked at in the offseason where if Denver, let's say Peyton Watson's going to is getting something like at the mid-level and maybe more, then I would imagine Denver's just not going to bring him back. That's going to be a lot of money to pay him with all the other obligations that they have on the roster. Maybe if they didn't give Christian Brown as much money as he did, that could be a little more feasible. So in that case, if they are losing Peyton Watson, then I think this makes a lot of sense for both sides. The pick swap might not seem all that much for a team like Dallas, but we're seeing now OKC, and I'm actually going to write about this. I'm going to have something published about tomorrow, how they're using pick swaps to further, keep their draft chest at a high value, especially over these next 2 years.
I wrote a big story about this too. Give it a look.
Okay. So
Mine
I'm going to
was
publish
a year ago, but like I think we have the same thesis. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something that I think would make a lot of sense. Like maybe if Peyton Watson's going to leave. So yeah, I think it's a great trade. YKB in the chat says, Sam, this is a W trade. So this is great.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
Yeah. And
we got our first. Do we have our first yes? This is the whole game here is who says no. We might have nobody says no.
Yeah, I mean, based on I'm not saying no. I'm just saying maybe just wait a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
You want to go next, or you want me to go? I've got it. What do you want to do?
Well, we kind of started this snake order, so you might as well go next.
All right. I feel like we're bad podcasters because we've kind of buried the lead. This is the only star I have listed. I haven't seen all of your trades. But let's get weird. Domantas Sabonis and Keon Ellis for Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, Buddy Hield, and Trace Jackson Davis. Trace Jackson Davis just in here because you have to make the money work. My thought here is Kuminga was worth a first to Sacramento in the offseason. I think, therefore, you're valuing Sabonis at 2 firsts here, where you're getting Kuminga and you're also getting the 2032 pick. Buddy going back to Sacramento would be kind of funny after all these years. The next Steph Curry returning to his old stomping grounds. Moses Moody's just like a fine role player. Like I think the Kings would be happy to have him.
Have you seen what he did tonight?
No, I didn't watch their game today. What happened?
I think he dropped like 7 threes in the first quarter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think Moody's. I'll say this. He's definitely not a throw-in at this point.
No, no, like he's a good player. Like he's a solid role player, but he also is the matching money. And I think Golden State would be doing this with the thought that they're getting a star. And like we talked about Anthony Davis for Golden State. If they're doing Anthony Davis, either Draymond or Jimmy has to be in there for salary matching purposes. With Sabonis, you can get away with that, and you can get Keon Ellis back, which helps you a lot because you are going to need point of attack defense if you're trading Moody and your whole shooting guard rotation. If you're trading Moody and Hield, like you're getting kind of thin there. So getting Keon Ellis back would help. I also just think that's a thing a smart team would do, which is like, oh, you're not using Keon Ellis, so sure, we'll get more out of him than you will. So what do you think about that? Am I in the right ballpark for the Sabonis value?
So I like the idea of Sabonis in Golden State. I think that can work out pretty well. I just think he makes a little too much money for like the amount of players the Warriors need to send out for them to really want to do that. I think right now, like they've like, as I look at their roster, they have such a low margin of error. Like they have like just the right amount of players right now where if you're going to cut like 2 rotation players, they might really take a hit from that if they're going to consolidate. Like they did their consolidation move for Jimmy, and yes, they could do somewhat of a consolidation move, but for them to send out, what is it, 1, 2,
it's
3,
3
4
players for 2 essentially, because Trace Jackson Davis, whatever. But you're basically functionally trading Kuminga, Moody, and Buddy for Sabonis and Keon Ellis.
Yeah, I mean it's a
So
lot
you're
of
going
shooting.
from 3 rotation players to 2.
So my fear with my concern with the Warriors going into the season was, are they going to have enough shooting? And so far, the answer is yes, they do. They're 4th in the NBA in 3-pointers made per game. They're
How much of that is Steph though?
It's like his normal shot diet. He's making like 4.5 per game. The big boost right now is Moody. I had not realized how much of a shooter he's been, especially these past few days. He's had like a 5 for 10 game, a 3 for 9 game. He's shooting right now 42% from 3 on 6 attempts per game. And well, I just want to see what exactly he did tonight. Maybe I'm trying to find it. I think he had like a crazy amount of 3. So look, I'm not saying he's like he's got like a huge amount of trade value. He hit 8 threes tonight. Now, I will say, as I look at his game log, he's also had some stinkers. Like he went 0 for 4 the day before and 0 for 6 like a week before. So it could be a little streaky. But I think the Warriors need the shooting right now. And that's why, this isn't one of my trades, but the idea of them trading Kuminga for like a Trey Murphy, I still feel that trade makes a lot of sense.
You keep bringing it up. The Pelicans aren't doing it.
We'll see. You never know.
They're not doing it. No.
The season's been a disaster. Why not?
Insane. That reporting drives me insane.
Okay, but in theory,
get quiet. Let me clear the lane. That reporting drives me crazy because this happens all the time on Twitter, where a major insider, and Jake Fisher, by the way, is like one of the best. This is not a criticism of Jake Fisher, but Jake Fisher puts out like one of the names that the Warriors would hypothetically be interested in is Trey Murphy. The reporting was not the Pelicans are considering Trey Murphy for Jonathan Kuminga. There was nothing in that reporting that linked the Pelicans. It was just saying the Warriors were reporting. But what happens is that gets distorted into this being a legitimate fake trade. The Pelicans aren't trading Trey Murphy.
Okay, but like the type of player Murphy is, I think I'd still want to turn Kuminga's cap hit into that. I think they need like one more shooter just to be safe. There many
Trey Murphys out there.
Yeah, like I don't know how real. Like as I look at Moody's, like he's always shot 36, 37% from 3, but like on very low volume. This is the first year he's jacked it up, and we'll see if this sustains over the course of the year. I still think they could use another shooter. Now I do like, again, so back to the Sabonis trade. I think it's fine. I think like the value's fine. And if the Warriors had like more depth, I think it's and they didn't have their second apron hard cap, like limiting what the rest of the roster could look like. I think they might do something like this, but I think it's going to be kind of complicate what they've got going on. I think most likely they say no. If he was making maybe like 35 million or less, and it's mostly like Kuminga and then a couple guys, okay, I think it makes a little more sense. But right, I think it just makes too much money for the
Well, this
Warriors.
is something that I think is going to get settled over the next few years is like every player in the NBA graduates from their pre-second apron valuation to their contract has been signed in the second apron era. There are a lot of guys like Sabonis and Markkanen, and we saw this a little bit with Brandon Ingram last year, where just like they were at one point just like no-brainer max. And now I think the number of guys who are going to get maxes, especially like 30 and 35% maxes. The 25% max, whatever. But like, I think we're going to graduate to a world where guys like Sabonis just aren't getting the blind 30% max anymore. And that's going to fundamentally change their trade market in a lot of ways. Because like Sabonis is hard to trade because he is not a max caliber player and he's making max caliber money. And he's not playing well this year, by the way. He's not helping his case. I don't think that's his fault. I think that's much more of an organizational thing. But yeah, trading Sabonis is hard because not that many teams have $40 million in salary to send out for that guy.
Yeah, and I do have a Sabonis trade. I don't love it. I just want to say to your point about some of these guys you just mentioned, I feel like Trae Young's going to be the first real test of that, where 3 years ago, the player Trae Young is now, automatic 30% max. I'm very curious to see where that ends up landing.
Well, given how well the Hawks are playing, like his value's gone down through no fault. I mean, he's been hurt, but like they're playing so well that I think they're kind of probably looking at this going like, yeah, Trae, like 5 years, 190 million is now 5 years, 180 million. We're good. And if we keep playing this well, that becomes 170 million very, very quickly. Like, I think the Trae situation is, I don't want to spoil a trade that I have coming up on Wednesday, but like, I think that's something to really watch.
Well, my next two, we're on Sabonis. My next two are Kings trades, and we should touch on. There has been, we did touch on the rumblings that the Kings could potentially start a rebuild this year. It was Dave Carmichael or Carmichael Dave. I forgot what the order is. He covers the Kings, saying that might be he's expecting that's what's going to happen. My big question is, every time the Kings have entered some sort of, every time they've scaled back, it's always been like a 1 year thing where in 2022, between 2019 and 2022, the Kings were unintentionally tanking, and they were just trying to put whatever pieces together to make a run. And then once they finally decided to rip the Band-Aid off in 21-22, all they really did was trade Tyrese Halliburton for Sabonis, had one high lottery pick for Keegan Murray, and that was kind of it. Now, yeah, like, so yeah, the Tyrese Halliburton pick preceded it, Davion Mitchell pick preceded it, but like as far as what they did to try to make an aggressive, try to get to competition, it was pretty quick. So I'm curious more so, is it going to be like a multi-year project where they're going to get multiple lottery picks, or is it going to be just like a 1 year thing, make a couple trades to try to make the pieces fit better? That's what I want to know. Time will tell.
Well,
but
what
as
you
I
have
look around,
to really factor in there is that they might think it's a 1 or 2 year thing, but we're now at 20 years. Like, just because they think it's a 1 or 2 year rebuild doesn't mean that's functionally how it's going to play out.
Yeah. So as I'm looking around the league, trying to see who values Sabonis, I already touched on the Bulls. Maybe I could see that happening. They can make the money work. The Bulls will have options. As we know, we both think they could definitely get Anthony Davis. I've thought about the Raptors for a while. I think they could easily make the money match, but they might have to wait.
Jakob Poeltl is their favorite player in the entire NBA.
And they'd have to wait till January anyways, until he's trade eligible, because he'd probably be a part of the package.
The 14th reason that extension was ridiculous. Like,
I don't think the Kings are going to want that contract though. So I would say probably not them. Is it crazy to think that maybe he's still very valuable to the Pacers?
I'm not going to lie. I thought about that too. The reason I didn't do it is that as you look at the Pacers salary, like those players are all good. And they're all like guys that mean something to them after their finals run. Like, I don't think the Pacers would trade Obi Toppin flippantly. Like, what's your money match there if you're gonna have Siakam and Halliburton making the max?
Okay, so what I basically I don't like this for now. I think this is something that can again be revisited in the offseason because the Pacers have no reason to want to do this type of trade right now. They're not that I think this trade would get them much higher than the bottom tier in the standings, that is. But I think right now you just kind of want to wait and just play the year out and
But you
then
can
make
fake an
that
injury
move.
if you have to. Like, let's be adults
Yeah.
about this. Like, he can play 5 games, come back, and then like, oh no, my ankle, my poor ankle,
Right.
and that's that.
So the deal I came up with would be so Benedict Mathurin, because they basically deciding if you're deciding whether you want to bring him or not. If you're not bringing him back, you're using that money towards another center. So him, and he would be the like premium positive value heading back to the Kings, as well as Obi Toppin, TJ McConnell, and Isaiah Jackson. That would if that's the basic framework, both teams that are pretty close to tax right now, they'd be able to stay under it, assuming it's done by the trade deadline. No picks involved. Now, on one hand, I think it's a lot of money. First of all, that's a lot of money. That's basically 30% max players for the Pacers between Halliburton, Pascal Siakam, and Sabonis. 2, he's not a positive on the defensive end, but maybe the Pacers feel like they can work around it when you got Andrew Nembhard, you've got Aaron Nesmith, you got Pascal Siakam. Maybe they feel that they can make it work defensively. They'd have to come to the conclusion that they might not be getting a better center as far as next year, because they're going to try to compete for a championship next year as soon as Tyrese Halliburton's back, and they're going to need to make an upgrade at center. If you're thinking that's too much money, the counter to that is that Pascal Siakam's contract has 2 more years after this. Sabonis's does as well. So if the Pacers are going to make this type of trade, you're basically looking at a 2-year window with that front court. So the big counter to the Kings doing it is that it would probably be really embarrassing for them to trade Sabonis back to the Pacers without really getting any premium draft picks, unless Benedict Mathurin really pops over there.
Well, can I counter this?
But
because the reverse, the reverse of this is you traded your lottery pick that you, I don't want to say gave up on, but determined wasn't a fit in the Halliburton trade. And now you're getting Indiana's back in Mathurin, and you can be like, now watch Mathurin become for us what Halliburton was for them. We're going to do to them what they did to us.
Yeah, so that's, people would mock the Kings for trading Sabonis back to...
We'll mock the Kings anyway.
Yeah. So, at this point, I'm sure they're pretty numb to it. But this could be like especially more embarrassing because then, what will the Halliburton trade have been for them? Yeah, what do you think about the idea of Sabonis back in Indiana?
I mean, it's not crazy. I just ultimately don't think that's an organization that's going to pay 3 max contracts. And like so much of their identity too, as they made the finals, was we play 10, 11 guys. We don't play huge minutes because we want to press and we want to play fast. And if you're going to have 3 max contracts, that's going to eat so deeply into your depth that you're just not going to be able to play that way even when Halliburton comes back. Now, the other thing that like quietly simmered, you mentioned the 2-year window that I kind of like, is that you're also going to have this very high lottery pick next year where you can kind of have that guy very much be a low usage on the back burner type while you have this Halliburton, Siakam, Sabonis core. It's not crazy. I wish Sabonis could 2 threes a game become 4 threes a game. Like, could you get the volume up a little bit? It's not crazy. I just think it's so counter to who they are as an organization. I just struggle with that.
Okay. No, I kind of had a hard time figuring out who would say no to that. I kind of feel like both teams would. I kind of felt that in the end both teams would probably say no. The Kings for the optics partially, and then maybe they could hold on to see if they could get more value later. But then, yeah, I think play style wise, you make a good point where if they do that move, the team would then basically be, you got
The starters would be awesome.
it'd be yeah, your three max guys, Nemhard, it'd be the starters plus Neesmith, and then you'd have Jarris still there and your pick, and then try to figure out the rest of the roster with hopefully more of these guys start to develop more. They'd be a little bit in the tax most likely, but you know what? You're trying to win a championship. Nothing wrong with paying a little tax. So I don't know, just a thought I had where if the Pacers, I think the Pacers are going to make a move for a center. Like right now, they don't have any answers, and assuming they get a top 3-4 pick, that probably wouldn't be a big man. So I don't know, just something to keep in the back of my mind. Maybe they do have interest in Sabonis again.
It's not crazy. I thought about Anthony Davis for them for the same reasons. Like the money is just where it becomes so difficult. Yeah. Like for Anthony Davis, it's so big that you have to start thinking about Siakam. But I very much get the logic.
My other Kings one. So it's very hard to. There's just so many guys on the Kings right now where they all sound pretty good on paper. The thing about this Kings team, it's like all these guys need the ball. Like they have a lot of offensive talent, but the combination of these guys just don't mesh that well for winning at a high level. So I think Monk would be the easiest to trade. Honestly, like what I saw, they started Keon Ellis today. We'll see, if that
I did not see that, but that puts a smile on my face. Finally.
I mean, we'll see if that amounts to something, but I could see them trading him now with the, with his unrestricted free agency looming.
Okay, the box score. I want to stop you for a second. I pulled up the ESPN box score because I hadn't watched that game. And you know how they rearranged the box score this year?
I've heard.
Yeah, the first line is points instead of minutes. So I pull up the box score and I look in the first column. It says Keon Ellis 2. I'm like, they started him and played him 2 minutes? And it's like, oh no, those are points. And on the far right, 15 minutes. He started and he played 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Dennis Schroeder off the bench plays 35.
That was Bronny James yesterday, starting and playing like 5 minutes. Either way, but the two most profile players, Domantas Sabonis and Zach LaVine. Very hard time figuring out something for Zach LaVine where they can just get off the money, like forget about trying to get something back that is positive. Can they just get off the last 2 years, $100 million or so? So, where is it? Why isn't it showing up? Okay. So my Zach LaVine trade, I pitched this to you via text a couple of days ago. Let me just pull it up again. So I believe the Bucks have had some interest in Zach LaVine. Like I think I've seen reports about that in like maybe last year before ahead of the last year's trade deadline. Now they have a lot of tax space where they can increase their payroll. So what I came up with, why isn't this showing up? Okay, whatever. What I came up with is Kuz. So that's the majority of the salary of the money matching, plus Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent Jr., Gary Harris, and Taurean Prince. Once you get to December 15th, you can do infinite aggregation with minimum salaries. So they could aggregate. So Harris and Prince are minimum salaries, but you're getting just within the amount of money needed to match for LaVine's contract. You still keep Bobby Portis's if you want to do something else later, but this would put them like pretty close to the tax line. So you've had some time to think about this one. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we've had this conversation in private, but my point with the Bucks, and this is even something that we've talked about a lot on the show, where I think teams have realized that you can get like 80% of the guard production at 10% of the cost now. Because the threshold, like the minimum bar, is so high when you're getting like a Cole Anthony, and Ryan Reynolds has been great. And, they got Gary Trent for the minimum and a slight raise a year ago. Like they've gotten such good guard play relative to the price that they've paid. I think if the Bucks were to make a major move, the thought would be, let's get a wing. Let's put our money into getting a wing, which we just don't have right now, and like preserve this cheap backcourt that we've built. And the idea there, by the way, is like more than anything, your goal isn't to win the championship this year. Your goal is to be good enough to get Giannis to extend. And that means like you gotta probably win a round. And I think with their perimeter defense and their wing defense as it is, that just doesn't feel very likely to me. So that's kind of what I'm prioritizing. I would lean towards a wing. What I do like about this is that if you're not giving up a pick to get LaVine, what you're really getting is next year a big expiring contract when you'll have 2 first-round picks to trade, your 2031 and your 2033. So if you can get Giannis to extend, now suddenly you can really go shopping and say, we have our money matching in LaVine, we have Giannis and Turner as a core. What can we do with a big expiring contract and 2 tradable first-round picks? So
Yeah,
not crazy.
You're right.
It's just not what I would be doing.
That's a good point. There is value in getting a little more salary, but they could do that in other ways. They don't need to bring in a players as with a contract as big as Zach LaVine.
But there's value in consolidating it though, because it's easier to trade one big expiring, generally speaking, than matching like, oh, we have 5 for 1 in the middle of the season because the roster spots are such a complication.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's too much of an issue. I wouldn't have pitched it if I didn't feel like they could figure that out. But I think we're in agreement that the Bucks would be better off if they did that Kuzma for Jeremy Grant trade I pitched like a month ago. Like that seems like more like the move that they should do, where you're getting presumably an upgrade to the front court, but also also increasing your payroll a little bit so you have a better salary potentially for trading next year. But
I think Grant's just playing well enough this year that they're not going to do that though. Like the window was before the season.
I think the window is probably now that he's playing this well. Like that's the good reason. That's a reason to do it. Like the Bulls did trying to get off LaVine as soon as he went crazy last year. That was the opportunity for the Kings to bite.
Yeah, but remember the Blazers are not fully rational actors here. Like they've spent this entire offseason and early season this year being like, no, it's really important to us that we're competitive and that we're making the play-in, and like they're in their best interest getting off of the Jeremy Grant contract. Like, yes, absolutely, somebody wants to take it, but they're not thinking that way. Like they're not thinking long term. They're only thinking right now is how can we like make the play-in because that matters to them.
Yeah, but as I look around, I really struggled to see that was like the best Zach LaVine trade I could come up with. So just basically, we're in agreement that very good chance, probably less than 50% chance, maybe less than 40% chance that Zach LaVine gets traded this year.
Yeah, I still got that. The Kings are probably stuck with him.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I conclude with that. If that's the best trade I could come up with.
So I will say, I'll throw this out there, tongue in cheek. I think Anthony Irwin commented on my tweet about the broadcast. Zach LaVine and Dario Saric for Anthony Davis. How many picks have to be involved for the Kings? For the Mavs to think about that?
Probably 2.
It's not like it's not as big a
right
number
now
as you would think, right? A year ago, the number is 5.
Yeah. Hold on, wait. Let me hear you say something. I think your mic. Hello?
Yeah, am I there?
Okay, no, you're fine. I don't know. I thought for your mic shut off for a second.
No.
All right. Yeah, let's move on. You've got 2 more.
Yeah, smaller scale here. We're off of Sabonis. We're off of Stars. Some reporting that the Pelicans, or rather the Pacers, were interested in Jose Alvarado. And I think the logic of that was that they sensed that TJ McConnell is getting older and they needed like somebody to come off their bench, play very, very hard for 15 to 18 minutes, but like not be a starter, like a very high level bench guy. Like I think Alvarado replicates a lot of what McConnell does. So can I get McConnell or can I get Alvarado to Indiana? And can I get them a center in the same deal? So here's what I came up with. Alvarado and Goga Batadze to the Pacers. TJ McConnell to the Magic. You've talked about this, I think. Like, can we get them a point guard of some sort? And then TJ McConnell and 3 seconds, 2 from the Magic, 1 from the Pacers, but the one from the Pacers is Utah next year. So potentially very high second. Are 3 seconds enough for the Pelicans to trade Alvarado and to take on a little bit of extra money, do you think?
I think so. I was thinking long and hard about your Herb Jones to the Lakers trade, and then I try to see if there's ways they can also get Alvarado, because I don't think the Lakers have 3 seconds, and I figured the Pelicans, they'll try to just maximize the value of Herb in that potential trade. So I'm actually like 100% aligned with you. I think 3 seconds is the prime price point for a guy like Jose Alvarado. Same kind of price that Dennis Schroeder went for last year, Dorian Finney-Smith went for last year. So yeah, I'm reading through the details what you send me. Yeah, TJ to the Magic. The only thing is that's the part where I think there's a bit of a hang up,
Well, it
because
shaves some money for them, by the way. It shaves like $5 million for them, which is helpful.
Yes, there is that, but I guess it's worth for this year. I think TJ's got one guaranteed year after this. I'm just thinking that at this point, Anthony Black is the primary backup one, and it's almost decision making time with him. He's going to be extension eligible next year. So I guess it's fine. Like because with Goga out, you bring in they just have to figure out their big man situation. So I think it makes sense all around.
All right, we might have another deal on our hands. I also just we've talked about this. There are a few very smart teams that have gone out of their way to cultivate trading relationships with dumb teams. Like the Spurs are notorious for this, where the Spurs only trade with the Kings and the Bulls. I like the idea of the Pacers kind of pointing to the Pelicans and being like, yeah, you're going to be our mark, where you gave us back our 2026 first round pick. And we're going to take Alvarado from you for good measure. And Jose Alvarado would get to Indiana and become a folk hero there. He'd be great for them. So, yeah, I do kind of like the idea of that.
And I'm with you, where if you can get off McConnell's contract, it's only one guaranteed year, then two after that, but you can get Jose Alvarado for half the cost.
You're gonna have to pay him this offseason, but
so no, he's got a team option.
I thought he has a player option.
Oh, player option.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you pay him I don't know how much more you could.
Yeah, he'd be like less than the mid level, I would guess, just given the nature of those guys that are very valuable, but for short minutes. Like McConnell is less than the mid level too. That's becoming an increasingly popular archetype. The guy who's very, very valuable for limited minutes. Mitchell Robinson is very high on that list too. Alex Caruso is the king of that.
Yeah, and I'm looking at, there's a lot of guards. Not a lot. There's some guards at the top of the draft for the Pacers. Maybe that's where they go with their pick. So they'd have a lot of backcourt, a lot of playmaking between.
Yeah, but if you don't think they're bringing back Mathurin, and I don't know, but that's a possibility we've talked about. You could have a fair bit that you're replacing.
Yeah. All right. Let me hear your last one.
All right. I wanted to work through what the draft comp here would be, so I left it blank. The basic structure is Nic Claxton for Anthony Simons and Sam Hauser. Nic Claxton has played well this year, especially on offense. He always had a little bit of on-ball juice that, for one reason or another, whether it was because he had all those ball handlers on the team, or then the offense was just such a mess afterward. And, it had never really come together, but it kind of has this year, where we're seeing him, especially as a passer, really develop. I think the Celtics have I think we both thought that they would be very fixated on getting a shooting center. But what we've seen this year, at least, is that they're great when Keita plays and they're terrible when he doesn't. The difference, if you look at the net rating, is stark. It's 20 points in either direction. It's nuts. I wonder if they might just say, yeah, let's have Keita and another, guy who's not a shooter but brings other things to the table offensively. I like the idea of Claxton for them. I think he fits a lot of what they do defensively. The question is, what is the draft comp? I think the 2026 Celtics pick that will probably be in the lottery or middle of the first round at worst is too much. The 2027 Celtics pick, because they owe their 2028 but through a swap, so they're fine Stepien wise. They can trade the 2027 pick. Would you do the 2027 pick with some protections for Claxton? Is that worth it? He does have the declining contract, which is very valuable to Boston. And plus, if you do it as Simons and Hauser, you dump so much money this year that theoretically you could duck the tax. So I mean, again, you'd have to figure out next year if you want to fully reset the clock, but there is some value to that. So what do you think?
So I like the tax reasons you gave out, and I think the value's fine for the Celtics. So then it just kind of comes down to how much do they value Nic Claxton? Do they like his contract? And do they see him as being part of this group that they're going to bring back next year? I would guess that he's probably making a little too much for their
Look,
plans.
they have to re-sign Kada, right? He's a free agent at the end of the year.
I think he's got one more year on a minimum. I'll take a quick
Oh,
look.
they is a team option. Of course he does. Every
Yeah,
Boston contract is 1 year longer than you think it is.
So now the thing with the Celtics, I wrote about this a while ago, is that I think they're going to get under the tax this year and then try to stay under the tax next year. That way, then they'd be out of the repeater tax for 3 years
Reset
in a
the
row
clock,
after
yes.
that. Yeah, for 3 years. I think that's the goal. So going back to some of the other guys we talked about, like specifically Zubac, I think that's kind of like the sweet spot, him making $18-20 million a year. Now we're just kind of like, we're getting really into the nitty gritty. Like next year, Claxton would make 23, but he's got some incentives, not that much. So probably the contract's not too big of an issue. I think it just comes down, is this the guy that we see being our starting big over the next few years? I don't know. I know he's improved on the ball. They've been using him as a hub. His passing assist numbers are up. I mean, so it sounds like maybe there's some like flashes of Horford. They're trying to make him into.
And he
I
can
don't know.
defend the
I
perimeter
just
too, which is important in Boston.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Like if the Celtics really value him, I don't know. I kind of feel like that's not the direction they'd want to go. If I'm just curious to know what
If
they
they have
think
a way
about
to
him.
get Zubac, I would do it. I think
Yeah,
Zubac it would probably be the best case scenario for them. I think that's complicated though, because Brooklyn's cap space opens the door for you to send Simons and Hauser and then take back Claxton and save a bunch of money. The Clippers are pressed right up against the hard cap, so you have to work in a third team, and that team either has to want somebody that you're paying. And given the way that Hauser's shooting this year, I don't think he's really going to appeal to teams very much. So yeah, it's just more complicated that way. But if they have a path to Zubats, I guess maybe you get Zubats and you say we're not going to deduct the tax. But this is just another option for them to consider.
yeah. I think if they like him a lot, then I think they probably consider it, especially with the descending contract could help with their tax goals. My feeling is that the Celtics might not value him in that way. Might not perceive him as a player that can be part of whatever Missoula is trying to get going, and maybe they fear that if they bring him in, they'll have a hard time moving him later. I would think probably Boston says no, but I do like it though. Personally, I like it. Okay, so let's get to my last one. This one's a little unhinged. So, so 2 points of context. If maybe, I've very lightly touched on these things in the past. Number one, so this trade involves Portland. I've been looking for trades where they save some money so they could use some cap space next year to renegotiate and extend Deni Avdija's contract. Mainly because once they presumably extend Scoot Henderson or trade for another point guard, they're not really going to have many other moves to make with the remaining flexibility they have left. Once they start to pay their point guard of the future, might as well use that flexibility if you can this year. Next offseason to renegotiate Avdija, because they're not going to be able to extend him. If you can get him to renegotiate something a couple of years early in advance, maybe you get a huge break on the back end. Number two, when we talked about the Pelicans and we were talking, kind of trying to figure out the Zion Williamson market, I really couldn't find a team that I am convinced he'd like start and close with, which kind of leads me to he might be like a super six man in the future. Like I don't think anyone's really like thought about this. Is just me thinking like what his role might be, especially with all the unavailability he has. I think any team bringing him in is not going to want to pay him the amount of money that he's making. And this then leads to something you brought up in, I think, the last episode or maybe the one before about the possibility of, hey, what if a team trades for Zion Williamson, waives him, and then brings him back at a smaller contract? That is a possibility. The team would just need to re-sign him with cap space. So here's what I came up
for that. Because I had a team that I wanted to do that for. Oh, I think it was Lakers that we did it. Well,
yeah. So Lakers could do that because they're probably gonna have cap space next year. Because I'll get into the mechanics at the end. But I'll walk you guys through what I'm doing because it's a two-parter. Give me one moment before I put it up. Okay, the trade, it's pretty simple. Jeremy Grant, who is a Troy Weaver guy, by the way, who signed him back in 2020. Jeremy Grant and that 2028 Magic first-round pick that the Blazers got to trade down in the most recent draft for Zion Williamson. That's the trade. Maybe there's like a couple other ancillary pieces to help with like the tax. I didn't like look too deeply into that part. So that's part one. You do that trade. I could see the Pelicans being interested in that because Troy Weaver likes Jeremy Grant. If you can get a first round pick on top of that, I think that's like a pretty good. I think that's pretty good for the Pelicans. Then, nope. Here's the Blazers cap sheet heading into next year. Wait, no, that's the wrong one. Sorry about that, everybody. Here's the Blazers cap sheet heading into next year. They're going to be like right at the cap with everything they've got going on. This assumes their draft pick conveys. So then they do that trade. You bring in Zion. Okay, he's making more money. But then he's non-guaranteed. You cut him. Now you have about $31 million in cap space. So the Blazers would only do this, or whichever team is trading for him would do this if they feel like, there's not really going to be a strong market for Zion at a certain amount. I'm thinking you bring him back at 2 for $50. That is I think that is where the sweet spot where he can be your super six man and often close depending on the situation. So 2 for $50, you give him like roughly 24 the first year. You got this much cap space left. The rest goes to Deni Avdija's renegotiation in I would be October of next year. You bump him up to this amount, and you can check the Substack post about the Blazers about the type of renegotiation I could see Avdija getting that he would accept. But I could see if it starts around here, then in the later years it could get close to 30 million. That's a lot of money up front for this year, next year. And then here's my build for the Blazers. And then they just fill up their roster with the room mid-level minimum slots. This is probably the most unhinged thing I've put, even like than some of my other videos, because this assumes that the Blazers can like actually successfully waive him and re-sign him on the cheap. They get their cake and eat it too. What do you think, Sam?
I have the dumbest way to criticize this at the start. Remember, I think it was 22, mid 2020. I can't remember the exact year. It was Russell Westbrook's second year with the Lakers, and they brought him off the bench in a preseason game, and he got hurt. And after the game, he said, well, my entire rhythm was thrown off. My body isn't used to coming off the bench. I think that was nonsense from Russ. He was just mad. I kind of think for Zion, it might be kind of risky to change like the way his body prepares for games, because he's so brittle that if you change his routine and it's like now you're coming off the bench with 5 minutes into the first quarter as opposed to starting games, like I feel like that increases his injury, because like anything increases his injury risk. So that would be kind of a fear for me. It's not the craziest idea. I'm sure all the issues I'm going to have where they just don't have enough spacing to maximize Zion. But like, if you could work it out with him in advance, it's not totally crazy. You do get Dame back next year, so you get some shooting back that way. Like, I'm open. Like, you know what? We're late in the podcast. Like, let's get frisky. Not the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, a lot of understandings would need to be had. Zion's market would have to be so low that this is conceivable. They can get it back at this amount. And you might be thinking, well, what if another team offers a little more? Well, are you going to give him a fully guaranteed contract? Because I'm thinking, what if you just give him a 1+1, the bird right? Then he'll retain his bird rights with the Blazers if you come back to them. So it's like a trial basis. I just have a hard time seeing any team right now, like unless you're like on the come up and you've got a lot of flexibility, like kind of like the Blazers. But even then, I don't think that amount of money really makes sense. Like if he's making a little bit less right now, I think, yeah, 100% go for it. So
Have
I just
you
wanted to
noticed
bring.
this year that
I just wanted I just wanted to flex my cap muscles. But anyways,
we're saying the whole it's so hard to find trades for this guy for so many guys this year. It's more than ever, and it's basically every guard and every center. I think we've reached a point in NBA history where teams only want to trade for wings.
yeah, or sign wings. Look at Houston. It's just wings. They don't want to address point guard. It really hasn't mattered to them so far.
No, well, Reach Effort's
Yeah.
been really good, so they haven't needed one.
Yeah, the Magic just wings all throughout. Do you want to? There's not. So I'll just check the chat really quick. We could just do some rapid fire. We didn't get that many.
Did Atlanta come back against Phoenix? Sorry, go on. Just anyway.
So
Phoenix
at the
blew
top,
a 20-point lead.
So this is from Derek Brown in the chat. He pitches Jaden Ivey, Ron Holland, Tobias Harris, and 2 second-round picks for Jaren Jackson Jr. So no first-round picks. I pitched something kind of similar in my Pistons offseason video from the offseason, where it was like Ivy, Holland, and maybe like 2 first-round picks. Now, based on how Jaren's playing, Derek's pitching a deal where no first-round picks are involved. Do you think that's enough for Memphis?
No, I think like Memphis, we've talked about Ja ad nauseum. There's so many, if you told me they changed coaches in a week, I'd buy it. If you told me they traded Ja in a month, I'd buy it. I think Jaren is the one guy they're going to hold on to, where in that market, it's going to be very important for them, where even if they're rebuilding, they want to have like this scion of that time we were kind of good and proof that like we're ready to start winning again relatively quickly if we want to. And if they were going to trade him, I think it would be for picks. I just don't think the players that Detroit's giving up. You said it's Ivy, Holland, Tobias Harris. Who am I missing?
And 2 second-round picks. No first.
Yeah, I don't think Holland and Ivy have that much value. Like, because you have to pay Ivy this offseason. So you're basically like, I guess that might make sense, actually, if you're also trading Ja and you're starting Ivy with the idea that he's going to be your long-term point guard. But even then, I don't like. Could you just trade for Ivy separately? Like, I kind of would rather do that. I don't know if that's really on the table, though. I am lower on Ron Holland than most. I don't know. Like, I that's not really worthwhile to me if I'm Memphis. As for Detroit, I know there's a temptation when any young team gets good to give them their star trade. Can we just like let this see how it goes? They're doing great. Like I think they're on this wave that Houston is on, where it's like, what if you actually don't need shooting? Let's just see. Let's see how it goes. Let's see if the NBA has changed. We can revisit this in the offseason.
I think Detroit is such an interesting position where Ron Holland's only a second year. Even if you're not a Holland guy, do you want to wait a little longer to see if he's going to continue improving? Because then his trade value will continue to go up. Maybe when you do make that big move, that would reduce whatever else you need attached to him to get a guy like Jaren. Same thing with like Jaden Ivey right now. I don't anticipate that Ivey's going to be a part of the Pistons long term. Like that's just my feeling based on all the unavailability there's been so far. But they could really use. But at the same time, they've just gotten so much from like Dennis Jenkins, like Caris LeVert's finally back. He's playing pretty well. It seems like he's playing well. Like Duncan Robinson's been really good. I think I still feel like they could use. I'll be really interested to see how Jaden Ivey can be infused back into there because they do need a little more offense, a little more on-ball juice. I feel like Detroit might want to wait a little more, as crazy as that sounds.
This did really give me the idea, though, that if Memphis does trade Ja, get Jaden Ivey as a replacement, because that's a perfect situation where there is some similarity there, where they're both
Yep.
these downhill, very fast attacking point guards. Say you're the Grizzlies and you want to trade Ja, but you don't want to like totally bottom out. If you could go out and get Jaden Ivey separately and say, okay, we're gonna have Jaden Ivey's not as good as Ja Morant was, but like we're gonna play the way that we're trying to play, Isalo's way with the fast pace, but with a different point guard in Ja's place who can do some similar stuff. And then we'll get our draft picks this year with 2 first-round picks and like kind of do this quick. That's kind of an interesting thought, I think.
Quick one here from YKB, MPJ to the Clips for Collins and Bogdanovich, which the Nets wouldn't do without a first round pick. I like Michael Porter Jr. for the Clippers. I don't like what the price would be trading any future first round pick right now. I would say Clippers probably say no.
I agree. I also like Brooke Lopez has been, I don't done like as done as you can look, at least to me when I've seen him.
Yeah.
So I don't think they'd want to give up Collins in a win now move because like at least Collins is somebody you can usably play both power forward and center. So I don't think they would probably do that. But I do like the idea of MPJ on the Clippers in a vacuum. I just
Yep.
yeah, with for you'd need a first, and I don't think they'd do that.
Yeah, I would have liked it last year if they were able to pull that off.
Yeah.
And it's still going to be kind of tough to make the money work. Last one. So another Warriors one. Kuminga, Buddy Hield, and Trace Jackson Davis for Klay Thompson and Daniel Gafford. So no picks listed. That's a lot of good value coming from the Warriors. I think the Mavs would have to give up something, and I don't think they're gonna want to. This could be something where it's like, not conceptually, I kind of like the idea of Kuminga on the Mavs. This could be like a multi-team type of deal. Maybe the Warriors get something different because I don't think Clay and Gafford is really what they need right now. So that's definitely a concept that could be expanded if another team was involved.
I think if Clay had like 5 hot weeks, we could revisit this in January. Where like if Clay didn't look dead, I'd be into it, but Clay has just not
Yeah.
looked at all like Clay this year. So like the Warriors have wanted that lob threat center for a long time. They used the number 2 pick on James Wiseman because they wanted that archetype so badly. So like I could see them being interested in Gafford. That in itself isn't crazy. It's just Clay is just kind of dead money at that point. You'd have to hope that bringing him back to Golden State would revive him, and like it would be a situation like Dwayne Wade having his year in Chicago and his 5 months, 4 months, whatever it was in Cleveland, and coming back to Miami, and it was all kumbaya, and he was great again. He was Dwayne Wade again. I think the Klay Thompson situation is different. I don't know if there's any resolution, but like there's real bad blood there that I think extends pretty deep. I don't think Clay is going to want to go back to Golden State. He'd also have to like prove that the Warriors should want him. So I don't know. I think Kuminga, they're probably not going to trade Kuminga for multiple guys. I think if they trade Kuminga, it's because they're getting one player they think is better than him, or they're getting a very valuable pick that they could parlay into that player.
I agree. And I don't know, I feel like with the way Clay's playing, even if he picks it up a little bit, I still don't really see him playing to the value of his contract. Maybe he, whether it's with the Mavs or with another team, maybe he gets a buyout ahead of next year. It wouldn't be this year, but maybe next
Right.
offseason. Yeah, I would agree. He probably doesn't go back to the Warriors. Maybe he wants to join Luka and the
That's an
Lakers.
optic thing. I hope he does get a buyout just because like he signed there with the idea that he was going to play with Luka. I feel like that's just a way to regain some goodwill in the league. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Sam, do you want to give a little hint on what we plan on doing later this week?
Well, I think I've tweeted that I'm writing it. So I don't know if I do this every year, but I do this most years. I do the blow it up rankings because, especially now this year, we've already had all the Memphis drama and the Dallas stuff and the Kings trying to sneak it in when nobody was looking and the Pelicans, just et cetera, et cetera. So I think this year doing it early makes sense. So I'm planning to publish the blow it up rankings on Wednesday. And then our plan is to pod about them after the fact.
All right. So, yeah, Sam will host that one coming up sometime, hopefully this week. So be on the lookout for that. Everyone, thank you for tuning in for another live edition. Our first Who Says No. I had a lot of fun. I suppose we'll revisit this maybe next month, something like that, once more stuff happens and the trade market starts to develop even more. So yeah, let us know also what you thought about this format. That's something that me and Sam's been wanting to do for a while. And thank you for being subscribers. If you're new to this, please subscribe to Third Apron wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the Substack. A lot of good salary cap analysis there. And be on the lookout for another episode, hopefully